We are human beings. We are spirit in earth suits doing the very best we can here.
Yes,
And when
yes.
I asked myself that question, must have been in the most perfect space because I was so honest with myself and I had no personal judgment. It
Mm,
was more mind blowing. It was like, finally, I'm figuring this out.
right.
So yeah, it was the best thing that I ever did for myself was taking personal responsibility instead of blaming everybody else.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson, and I'm back for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to follow us on our social media channels, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or where you can find us, or you can subscribe on YouTube by simply tapping that bell down below. Ding, 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 and you're connected to all great things audacious related. Now, when it comes to managing our relationships, it's important that we're really not only mindful of our actions, but be prepared to take responsibility for them as well. And that's very important if we're looking to advance our relationships with one another, especially those meaningful ones. My friend Kristen Brown joins me on this edition of the podcast for a delightful conversation on the responsibility we have to ourselves to take full ownership for the things we do. As a relationship coach, Kristen encourages and promotes the concept of self-love, which will naturally put us on that path to stop being a people pleaser and other self-destructing behaviors. It certainly is a wonderful conversation that I am certain you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, here's my chat with Kristen Brown. Enjoy. Hey, Kristen, thank you for joining me here on the Audacious Living Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you back for a second time. And, people go back a second time, and it is a second time because we had some technical difficulties the first time around. So you get a chance to do this again.
Everything is purposeful. Yes. Everything is divine.
Yes.
And I don't sweat that stuff, but I was like, what a blessing. I get to talk to Audley again. This is great. Very good.
And I left with the same feeling, Kristen, because we are going to get into your work and all that you do, but I just remember, so for me, the biggest blessing about what I'm able to do and I have the privilege of doing is chatting with just so many brilliant, smart, intelligent people, and I glean from themselves and go, oh wow, maybe there's something I can use in my own life and make me better or manage my relationships. The fact that I can do this again is a thrill. So thank you for being here again. As a relationship and life coach, you help give people some direction in terms of how they manage relationships in their own lives, and I love the way you do that because you force individuals to look at themselves first as a starting point. So I've sort of set the table there. Why don't I want to get out of the way and let you take over? How's that sound?
That sounds great. Oh, this is so important. It was the turning point for me is when I stopped looking out there and stopped pointing the finger at everybody else and blaming everybody else for what was being done to me. And that's very easy to do, as we all know, because people are doing crappy things. They're doing disrespectful things, dishonoring things, abusive things to us. And what happened to me, the short backstory is that I was in my second marriage that had all kinds of dysfunction. There was substance abuse, there was cheating, there was physical abuse, these type of things. And after that relationship crashed and burned, and I was thrust into what I call my tsunami, which was everything that made me feel safe in life was gone. It felt like this wave came in and just wiped my life out. I wasn't a wife anymore. I wasn't a homeowner anymore. I wasn't a business owner anymore. All these false identities and I set course to, I actually vowed to myself to remain single and celibate, because yet again, looking back over my history, is like another person, another partner who has treated me poorly, not the way that I treat them.
Right.
And something inside of me said, how are you treating you this way? So I took all that fractured focus that was out here pointing, blaming, and I turned it towards myself. And I said, how are you disrespecting, dishonoring, not protecting, not loving? How are you doing that to you, Kristen? And it was like, it was everywhere. The answer, I just looked around. I remember that moment. It was a Wednesday at like 2:00, sitting on the edge of my bed. And I remember thinking, this is me. I'm the common denominator in all of this that's happening.
So, and so for me, the piece I look back on is you're now challenging and questioning everything that's gone on in your life, right? Like up and that, because again, because you are that common denominator. You know, everything that's happened up until that point, you're now revisiting, saying, you know, what was my, you know, what part did I have to play in this? And you're realizing you had a significant part. That must be the tsunami, the mind blowing must have been mind blowing in that regard.
Well, a really fun part of this, oddly, is that my tsunami husband is what I call him, my tsunami ex. He said in one of our last arguments, he said, you're going to have 2 divorces. You're the common denominator, because he was trying to blame me.
Right.
And outwardly, I was not doing any of the things that he was doing. I was, really great person to be with, to be honest with you.
Right.
And I was like, I just shrugged that off, because I was like, yeah, just trying to make me wrong. But it was his words that came back to me and said, you're the common denominator. This was a little while later. I couldn't tell you how long, because that whole time was a blur for me, maybe 6 months, 8 months.
Right.
And I thought, I am the common denominator. So the words that were meant to harm me were actually the words that blessed me.
Yeah. Empowered you.
Yeah. And so here's what I want to say to people is that this introspection that we can do for ourselves, if we can get ourselves into a really neutral space and just ask yourself some honest questions, don't judge, don't shame. We are human beings. We are spirit in earth suits doing the very best we can here.
Yes. Yes.
And when I asked myself that question, I must have been in the most perfect space, because I was so honest with myself and I had no personal judgment. It was more mind blowing. It was like, finally, I'm figuring this out.
Right.
So yeah, it was the best thing that I ever did for myself, was taking personal responsibility instead of blaming everybody else. Because had I taking all these behaviors as I had before to friends and people and saying, this person's doing this, they would have all stood there and said, oh, of course, that's terrible. The judge and jury would have, done what they needed to do with them.
Yeah.
But that wasn't serving me, because my pattern was continuing. So I stopped that energy going there and I put all that energy here.
I also do love the fact that you're giving yourself some grace and some space to forgive yourself and not judge yourself, not beat yourself up, not demonize yourself, because that sometimes can happen in these moments where you're doing this uncovering and the uncovering and the digging. It's important work to do, as long as you're not beating yourself up. Absolutely.
I remember at one point in my journey, I was so angry. I was so frustrated. I remember standing over what I call an abyss, and it was like visual in my mind. And I was looking over this hole in the ground that had this little berm around it. Very strange, but this was the visual. And I looked into it, and it felt so alluring to go into that, which was victimhood, to stay in the blame game. And I remember just my ego going, that's so tasty. That's so decadent to just be in there and blame.
Right.
And I remember in that moment, I said, oh, heck no. It wasn't those words, but I'm trying to be clean on your podcast. I was like, heck no.
Yeah.
I am choosing victory. I am no one's victim.
Yes.
And I remember stepping back and turning my back and walking the other way. And I remember thinking, there's a fierceness that I drew up inside of myself. And it doesn't really matter what the motivation is, as long as no one has to do anything. So I'm not implying that, but as long as a person makes that decision for themselves, you have changed trajectory. I didn't know what was going to come from that. I didn't know where I was going to go. I just knew I was not going to be a victim. And the power inside of me was, I will not let them win.
Right.
So that motivated me. Not only that, it was the love of my children, because I looked at that victim hole and I thought, this ain't a good parent.
Right.
Walking around in that energy is not going to lead me to raising high functioning kids into high functioning adults.
Gotcha.
So I made that choice and I moved away.
Part of the choice that you had to make is literally rebuilding your life, Kristen. Like that is a huge, even put the realizations aside for just a moment, because that in itself is, but just trying to rebuild your life while you're also managing these newfound realizations too. And you had young kids at the time. Like, please talk about that sort of journey.
I love that you asked that. And you know what I really like right now, Audley, is that every time I talk to you, I'm like, you see things, you got that laser focus behind the veil. And I appreciate that, because it actually made my eyes tear up to be seen, to be honest with you. I was like, wow, he really sees what I went through. So I'm gonna try to not have a little teary moment here, but I'm a person who worked since I was 15. I had an 841 credit rating. I owned businesses. I owned a home. I was doing the things. And here I was, homeless, with 3 children in tow, forced to move back in gracefully. I will tell you, with my mother and stepfather, with nothing. I had, a couple $1,000s to I had like some money in savings, but nothing that was going to save me.
Right.
And I really got super present, because when I was trying to control my life, which I call moving the chess pieces on the board, thinking that I'm in charge,
right,
it never worked.
Right.
It's just like I was on a hamster wheel of struggle. So there was a moment where I completely let go, let God. I relaxed and I said, I can't do this from my level of thinking. Nobody out here can save me. And I relaxed and I said, God, guide me. And I've always had a really good relationship. I'm comfortable calling it God. I also call it source energy, love, universal love, and intelligence, all these things.
I don't know if they're between people, but a higher power is really what you're acknowledging.
Yes. This energy of the cosmos. And I was like, just guide me.
Yeah.
And I worked. One of the most important things that I did, Audley, was quiet my mind and my body, because my nervous system, y'all, was shot. It was shot. My lip was pulling up in the corner like an Elvis nearby itself driving one day. My heart was pounding all the time. I was in such a state of panic and fear because I wasn't able to care for my kids. And it was this moment that I just let go and I said, please guide me. I will do my work, which is get quiet, calm myself down so that I can hear. And then slowly but surely the pieces moved into place. And I'm not going to say, in hindsight, it all looks like it was really easy, right? I'm saying it in a couple paragraphs.
Sure.
But I was angry that I had to live there. I was grateful that they had me. But I was angry. Every time I walked up to this house, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I can't believe I live with my mother again. Like, what happened to me? All of these things. But I stopped resisting. I stopped resisting what is. Another side note is my mom had cancer for 5 years, a slow growing cancer. So and then I was there 5 years. We were there. So I had 5 years of really condensed time with my mother, that it was one of the most beautiful things that I've experienced, which we were really close anyway, but just to live in the house with her as her health was doing what it was doing. So there's blessings in everything if we let go and just let go and flow.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember a little while ago, I remember going through a bit of a financial challenge, and it was my 80-year-old mother I turned to. And I remember the feeling going, man, I can't believe this. Like I should be further ahead in life, and I should, but again, I had to let that go and realize that, the most important thing is that there was support and there was help that was able to get me to where I needed to go. And you can look back at that situation and go, okay, all right, I did what I had to do, because that's really what it is, and be appreciative that the support was there. And so, but I do hear you loud and clear as you look at where you should be in life. But I also think, Kristen, it's those judgments that we apply to ourselves, and we'll constantly sort of fall into that hole if we let these judgments take over our lives. And so glad that you managed to work through that.
You said the operative word there, which is manage. And what I did was manage my mind. Because my mind was going everywhere. It was in all kinds of emotions, all kinds of spaces, all kinds of judgments, all kinds of, this is never going to happen for me again. This will never happen, all this stuff. And I just slowly unpacked. I just took one judgment at a time.
Yeah.
We can't rush healing.
That's right.
But we can show up to healing. And I just slowly did this, slowly did this, slowly did this. And then I woke up one day and I was like, gosh, I was at peace.
Yes.
With all of this stuff still going on. And not all of it, like, things were starting to work out and I got my clientele back. I was a hairdresser and I had given up my 19-year career to stay home because my tsunami ex was a overseas pilot. He was gone 5 and 6 weeks at a time. And now we had another child and I was basically a single mom again.
Right.
It just worked out that I was able to give up my career. So you can't get that back quickly. It's like doing hair is a client building thing.
Yeah.
It's not something you walk in, you get a paycheck for every 2 weeks.
Right.
So, things were starting to work out, but it was just one thought at a time, one thought at a time, one fear at a time, 1 second at a time. I was very mindful, oddly, about what I needed. I would ask myself, I remember the first Christmas Eve at my mom's house and the whole family's there. We had a big family and all the spouses and the grandkids and the neighbors and the friends and the stuff. And I remember sitting out there and feeling so awful at where I was at in my life that I said, what do you need? And I said, I need to get out of this. And I went to my bedroom and watched Dateline. I've never left a family function like that, but I had to get out of the looking around at all these quote happy people when I was in such a bad space. But I did it. The old people pleaser in me would have been like, oh, stay here. Don't make a big deal. Don't show that this is bothering you. Don't be anybody's burden.
Right.
I just said, what do you need, girl? What do you need?
Yep.
You need to just be away for a minute and that's okay.
I love the internal dialogue around that, which is awesome. I loved also the fact you talked earlier about quieting yourself and being able to hear. When we're in the midst of all that's going on and our emotions are high, and they're all these thoughts are the flight or fight thoughts and all those ones that are going along associated with these feelings. To be able to quiet that and bring the temperature down, as I like to say, bring the temperature down and be able to sort of hear, which is important. You talked earlier about attracting the wrong partner. I wonder if you could explain why that happens or why we attract the wrong partner.
Okay, so there's several reasons, and you'll hear people will hear a lot of reasons out in the world. One is people say that we attract our parents.
Okay.
The things that were done in our youth, that we attract that to us because it feels quote comfortable, but also as an opportunity spiritually for an opportunity to heal from that. And I do believe in that. I when I look back, I see those type of things, but I also know this. What I discovered is that we attract people from the level of energy that we are at. So, and that has to do with how well that we value ourselves. And I say this with absolute certainty. I am an amazing person. I don't lie. I don't cheat. I don't steal. I don't, I do all the good things, yet, 2 abusive boyfriends, all kinds of stuff that was terrible. Or one was a husband. But I had to look at that and say, what's happening? And when I realized that I was how I was treating myself, like we mentioned 10 minutes ago or so ago, I was being disrespectful, dishonoring, all these things. What that boiled down to is I didn't value and honor Kristen. I didn't see myself. I saw myself through a muddy lens, a lens that I had to work hard for love, or I had to be everything to everybody. And I had to shift and morph and shape shift and change and put that smile on and be easygoing girl. And, all these masks to get love, approval, and acceptance from other people. So I started to attract people to me to show me that. So my level of unvalue, I guess is the right word, they were reflecting that back to me. So who we are, our relationships will mirror how we think and feel about ourselves. So the cure was to change how I thought and felt about myself. But it wasn't just from affirmations. Affirmations are great, don't get me wrong, but they get you at a certain level. I had to go into the full spiritual healing. I had to go into what I now call self-love tenets. I didn't know it. I went back afterwards after I was feeling great and saying, what did I do? Like, how did I get myself to this place?
Right.
And it was through grace and forgiveness. It was through respect and protection. It was through positive and loving self-talk. It was self-care. Like I mentioned, what do I need in this moment on Christmas Eve? And it's through, it was through these type of things that I started to apply this to myself, that I started to heal those wounds inside of me, that programming that came through our childhood. And by the way, we all have them. We are the walking wounded. This is part of the path. Nobody comes out of this unscathed.
That's right.
And we pick up those wounds and those programmings in our childhood, sometimes from parents, not always from parents. A lot of people want to blame parents. And I want to say it can be society, it can be magazines, it could be the neighbor, it could be the teacher. It's not just our parents.
And on our parents here for a second, Kristen, because it's important to understand is our parents are doing as you talked about, the best they possibly can for us. And you look at, there's all sorts of extenuating circumstances that force them to make certain decisions for us in the time, the society, there could be financial implications. There's just so many. And so, and I say this because what I don't want people to do is villainize or demonize their parents, right? Because that's not, the intent wasn't to make you out to a certain person and why they made the decision that they did. And so that's why I wanted, because people will blame their parents, but I think it's deeper than just it's my mom's fault because she didn't do this, my dad didn't do that. There's a lot more there.
Absolutely. And I love that you say that, because our parents are not perfect. And by the way, they're the walking wounded too.
Sure.
Especially in my generation. I don't know how old you are, but my parents' generation is the ones that are, there was not a lot of emotional intelligence happening back then. There was not
didn't exist.
They were not healing.
Mm-hmm.
So they were doing the very best that they could at the moment. And sometimes we picked things up from them, from our experience, but we're going to pick them up anyway, parents or not, whoever. And in my first book, I talk about this. I talk about forgiving people, really taking the time to go through life and cut that toxic tie between you and that person or that perpetrator, however on the spectrum it was of dastardly, is just really learning to cut that tie. Because again, when we're staying tethered to someone else, our energy is fractured out. So when we can cut that, return our energy back to us through forgiveness, because forgiveness is through us. It is for us. It is not for the other person. Many of these people walking around perpetrating, they're not wondering if we've forgiven them 10 years later. Many times they've forgotten.
They've moved on.
They don't give a hoot. It's us that is suffering.
Carrying it. We're carrying the baggage, right?
We're carrying the baggage. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
I heard an expression not too long ago, we have to find ways to turn our baggage into our luggage, right? Because when you can make that switch, and so essentially the hurts and the pains and the things that you carry, use those to better yourself is really essentially, if we can find ways to do that, as opposed to having them weigh us down, we can get ourselves further ahead. So
there's a blessing in every lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a blessing. And so one of the things for me, one of the major shifts for me was starting to ask myself, why is this happening? This is happening for me, not to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty popular now out in the world. I'm hearing it from a lot of people. 10, 12 years ago, that was the first time I had heard that. Couldn't tell you from who. And I remember thinking, okay, so everything happens for me. It's an opportunity for me to grow. It's an opportunity for me to look inside and say, what is it about me that I can shift, heal, grow, morph, evolve, upgrade, up level? And even shockingly, what this has turned out to is even when I'm being perpetrated upon again, let's say someone's yelling at me for no reason or blaming me for something that's not true or taking things personally or something, I still ask myself in that moment, God, what would you have me see here about myself?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be something like, well, maybe I'm taking it personally because they're taking something personally. It can be anything, but we don't have control out there. Right. We got to return that control. Right. That's why I call it reclaiming our personal power. You know it. I know you know it. I can tell on your face that we don't have control of anybody else. That was also, can only change self.
Well, and we constantly get ourselves into trouble when we think we can control others. That's we see that over and over and over and over again. I want so-and-so to do this. They want so-and-so. They're not doing it. And we're working ourselves up. We're getting, agitated, but we can't control. And so if we come to that realization and understanding that I can't control what Kristen does, and Kristen can't control what Audley does, but it makes it a lot easier because then you understand what's in your scope of control, and what your scope of control is how you respond to situations.
Yeah, I love the way you talk. Absolutely. And I say,
Thank you.
can I just interview you? Can we just switch us?
You can have here, Kristen, you have the mic.
Yeah. Let me take the mic from you, bro. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's that's taken our power back.
Yeah.
And I love that. And the thing is when other people are doing something to me like that, and just sitting in that moment and quieting, because quieting my brain, because it's coming. Let's say, my teenager or someone is, going off about something.
Yep.
And I can feel it in my body, because our body's going to tell us when we're being, I call it perpetrated upon. It can, it can even be someone rolling their eyes at you.
Yep.
We know when it's not respectful. But in that moment, I get quiet and I slow down. And instead of reacting, I try to choose a response.
Yeah.
Now, am I 1,000% good at this, you guys? No, I'm a human being. I've got moods, and, sometimes I'm sleepy or tired or what, got a lot on my mind. But for the most part, I slow down and I say, hey, what's a good response? And here's the thing. We have this beautiful thing in life called boundaries.
Yes. Yeah.
Boundaries are gorgeous, and they don't have to be set with force. It can be merely this. I see that you're turning this, you're taking your mood out on me.
Yep.
I would love to hear you, but I can't listen when you're in that tone.
Yes.
So why don't you just take a minute and come back when you're ready?
Yep.
It can be that simple. And we're going to get the pushback, which I talk about in my book.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get the pushback because people, not all the time, but sometimes we get the pushback because we're changing the game. They're used to us putting up with the stuff.
Absolutely.
They don't know what to do with this new thing. So sometimes it takes a minute, but soon enough, they'll know when they do come back and you show up and you didn't alter your energy to lower it to match theirs.
Right.
The relationship or the conversation can go on, and so much healing can come from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember getting to a dialogue with someone who said a bunch of things about me that I didn't agree with. And in the moment, again, we're humans. I didn't respond the right way. I got defensive and I was argumentative, attacked, and the conversation ended abruptly. And the phone, and this was over the telephone. The phone hung up, and I remember, and at the end of that conversation, like, no, that wasn't the response. And I called him back and I said, I've got to take some ownership for my actions. I heard what you said, and whether I disagree or not, I still responded to you wrong. You have every right to feel the way you do or think the way you think of me, and that's okay. But I still have to own the way I respond to it. We don't have to agree, and I think and that's okay too. But what we do have to have is a mutual level of respect in how we communicate if we want this relationship to continue. And I remember at the end of my speech, he was just floored. And what it did, it brought the temperature down.
Absolutely. Ownership. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. And as I was going to say, when you can bring that temperature down, you're allowed to hear each other. And you're going to talk about ownership. So I'm going to let you finish that point because I'm going to agree with you anyways.
Ownership is one of the most beautiful things that we can bring to a relationship, even when we don't agree. You didn't agree. You didn't own what the person was saying.
Right. You
owned what you brought that could have been not cool, dysfunctional, whatever we want to call it, right? You said, okay, I'm still not going to own that, but I'm going to own this. Right. I'm going to own this piece. I remember doing that with my kids, like getting mad at them, frustrated, single mom, dumb back in the day, and yelling at them about something. And then I said, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to be a screamer. Your dad was a screamer. And so I walked back in there. I apologized for my voice. I apologized for that. I did not apologize for the message I was giving, because that was still true.
Yep.
Right. And I want to say that, earlier in this broadcast, I teared up when you were seeing me, right? Because we want to be seen for who we are. And when we are seen, it's so humbling and beautiful. It's like, wow, someone sees me. And it's very difficult when somebody doesn't.
No.
Or someone wants to put their junk on you, they're projecting onto you. And it's like, that is not mine. And oddly, I just want to honor you in this moment, soul sibling, because you did not own what's not yours. Correct. And I'm certain that you would own it if it was. And this is what's so important for, I wrote a book called The Recovering People Pleaser. And I don't know your backstory, but that was mine. A lot of times people pleasers are willing to own what's not theirs just to
Right.
keep
The
peace.
relationship going. Yeah. Yeah.
That is a hell no for me now. If
Right.
someone
Right.
says, you're this or you're that, I will ponder it. But then I'm like, nope, can't own that. I
That's
know
right.
me so well. I have a
Yes.
PhD in Kristen. I
Yes.
have a
Oh, I love that.
PhD.
Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
And it's like, no, but if they say something that is true, I'll say, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I own that. My bad. And we have this thing in my family called
Yeah.
my bad, where I'm like, all we have to do, and I would love for people to hear this, all we have to do, the second that thing happens, we know it. There's a part of us that knows,
Absolutely.
right? The second it happens and they go, hey, and we go, my bad. My family, that dissipates everything. It's like the end, like you said, temperature comes down, the whole thing drops. We don't even have to go on
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
It's just
Because
my
we
bad. We're
understand.
like, move on.
That's right. That's right.
To
That's right.
reset.
I can never, I don't guarantee perfection at all. Now, I won't guarantee I'll always make the right decision in the right moment. But what I will guarantee is that I'll walk away with a lesson when I've made the wrong decision. And chances of that same mistake happening the second time is a lot lower. May happen, perhaps, because we're human, as we talked earlier. But the idea is that you take from those experiences, and again, the blessing and the lesson, as you talked about earlier, and that's where we stay away from those repeated patterns over and over and over again. So you do that self analysis, where I'm at, what I'm doing, why did I make this decision? Was it because I was tired? Maybe I was moody. Maybe something else is going on externally that impacted me, or what's happening inside of me. And that look within is I'm always, Kristen, been a big fan of. And I will always sort of look at myself first and go, what did I do? And if I don't see the answer there, I'm not owning it. Like you said, it's not mine.
Don't own it. Be honest with ourselves. Own what's ours. Don't own what's ours. And I love what you're talking about, where you said, when you own it, the likelihood of you doing it again is decreased. And I agree with that. I went through this process back, during this tsunami. I had this 2-year. Okay, let me back up. So when I vowed to remain single and celibate, I didn't know how long that was going to take. I called that time the College of Kristen, because it was a very concentrated time, and it was all about learning and growth and study and going within. It was really about learning about myself in that College of Kristen. But during that time, one of the things I did, because I went through this whole self-forgiveness practice where I literally went through every embarrassing, shameful thing that I was still holding on to.
Yes.
And I went through this self-forgiveness practice. Let me tell you something, people. The freedom you're going to get from that is going to blow your head, because it is unbelievable. But not only did I forgive myself, I then said to God, to Spirit, I said, please help me to choose better next time. Slow me down enough, come inside of my heart, help me choose better the next time. Help me return to my right mind faster than I did that last time. And like you said, the chances of it happening, it may still, because again, we don't claim perfection. I'm the same.
Right. That's right.
And who wants to be perfect? I don't know, how boring. But
not this guy.
no, I don't claim perfection by any means.
Right.
But yet I do want to be an example of love in the world. Do want to be an example of someone who owns their stuff. I do want to be an example of someone who tries to do the very best she can. I want to slide into home plate, oddly, being like, that was great. You guys take it from here. I feel good. I don't want regret.
Right.
Regret feels terrible in my body. I don't like it.
No.
And so the way to get rid of that is to own the stuff, own it, course correct, shift, heal something inside of yourself so that we do it differently next time.
Yeah. No, I hear you talk about sliding the home plate. I'm a fan of the walk-off home run myself. I want to walk in there proudly with my head high. That's what we did. But I hear you. High fives for everybody. With all that we're talking about, I think the bow that sort of sums us up really nicely is us taking that journey to our authentic selves. Like, that's the end goal here, and all that we've gone through, all the lessons, all the introspection, the learnings, to get to that point where we're truly being our authentic selves, and that really needs to be the end goal for everyone, really, to get to that place where you know who you are, what you want, what you stand for. I wonder if you sort of talk about that piece of the journey, because I think that's the bow on it all, right? Can't hear you.
When we come here, we are whole and perfect.
Yes.
For this little soul that enters a human body, we know nothing other than our divinity. But
Yes.
as we grow and our brain waves increase and we take on this programming from the outside world, we start to try to adjust and morph ourselves, and we're fracturing away from that authentic self because we're like, well, I got to be this way, or I have to be that way, or, oh, I get attention when I'm funny, so I better be funny all the time, or
Right.
I get attention when I'm whatever. So we put on these masks, is what I call them, and we become something other than what we are, in hopes of love, approval, and acceptance. And I believe the journey is what you're saying too, is that we are slowly taking off these masks, healing ourselves, stepping more and
Yes.
more and more into our
Yes.
authentic self. And what feels so good is just being who we are. It's
Man.
just being all of who we are. Like, there's no one on this earth that is not just glorious.
Right.
Their authentic self is glorious and beautiful and brilliant. And I sit in front of people sometimes, oddly, and I just stare at them like, you are magnificent.
Yeah.
The way you smile, the way you talk, the way you walk, the way you laugh, the way you hug, the way you cook, the way, whatever it is that these people are doing. Like, there's so much glory in the world, yet I call us muddy Ferraris. We're these beautiful, and I use the Ferrari. That wouldn't be my car of choice. My car of choice would be something different.
Sure,
But
but I
people
get
get
it.
the visual.
Absolutely.
So you think a big, shiny, gorgeous, expensive red Ferrari, and it's got all this mud on it and straw on it. The value, the brilliance is still there, but we're just clearing off the mud,
Yeah.
clearing off the
Yep.
straw. The value is there. We've just got muddy.
Yep.
And when we can step into that full authenticity, which is what I learned. Here's what's interesting. There's a weird caveat here, is my whole life I've been told I'm real.
Okay.
As far back as high school, it was like, you're so
Okay.
real, you're so real. And I am, because I'm very honest with who I am and things like that.
Right.
Yet there was this little sidebar, this little kind of, it was almost like a clear mask that
Okay.
I put on. So I was still me, but I was still chameleoning a little bit and shifting and morphing to fit in and not quite say things that I thought would upset people. So we can still be, there's a lot of nuance to
Yes.
this, because
Yes.
because I thought I was real.
Mhm.
I say it like it is. I still do.
Right.
But I had these masks that thought I had to be something else. So it was really returning back to that authentic self. You know what I wrote on my notepad here before I got on?
What's
I'm going
that?
to show you guys. Speak from your heart. That's all I wrote.
I love
Speak
it.
from your heart 3 times. I didn't
love
plan. I didn't anything. It's like, I want to be Kristen Brown in any given moment, because if I'm something else, I'm A, selling a false front, and B, it's something I'm going to have to live up to. I don't want to keep tabs on all that.
No.
So when I broke this pattern, and I say broke it because the large chunk of it broke off, right?
Okay.
But I have still continued to heal. We're not done. We're never done. But when I dated who's now my husband, he wanted to come over in the evening, and I tell this story a lot. I had on my daughter's, not even my own, flannel pajama bottoms that were too short. I had some gross sweatshirt on, my hair in a pony, and all I did was brush my teeth. I was like, this is me. And I want you, if you're going to fall in love with me, you're going to fall in love with the real deal.
Yeah.
Because so many times we have this mask or this persona that we think we have to keep. And
Yes.
we'll never truly feel loved by that person, because we know they fell in love with this false front.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Oh, that's powerful. That's so powerful. And I think when we can move closer to our real self. Well, first off, we'll just naturally, we'll feel better. We'll just feel better first and foremost. And you never have to get to this point of wondering, does this person really like me, or the person, like, all those thoughts just go away. You're just being your natural self. So you're wearing your daughter's pajamas. Who cares? This is who I am. Right. And I think that really is the best, most liberating place to be in. And the more we can stay in that zone or in that space, I think the better it is for us overall in the end of the day.
Oh my gosh, it's freedom.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe, that a human being's greatest value is freedom. That's what we value the most, is to really be able to be who we are.
Yeah.
And when I went like this, like I was dropping an 80-pound backpack when you were saying that, because that's what happens. Is that we look around in life, it's like, wow, I don't have all this heavy weight on me anymore, that we don't even know is there.
Right.
It became natural. It's we put on this backpack. We've been carrying this thing around and it's become natural for us.
Yes. Yes.
But when it's gone, the weight of it
Yep.
is unbelievable.
That's
It's
right.
freedom and it's
It
peace.
is. Yep. Yep. Oh, so lovely. You referenced your book a couple times, Kristen. Let's give our audience insight into your writing, because you are an author and people pleaser. Yes, recovering people pleaser.
Yes. I just published this book. It was released on April 11th, 2023. And within hours, it became an international #1 bestseller.
So lovely.
And I'm very humble about that.
Congratulations. No, that's a
Thank
big
you.
deal. No, that is a big deal. Congratulations.
Thank you. I wrote this book in 6 months, and I did the same thing that I wrote here on this pad of paper before I got on to speak with you. Speak from your heart. That's all I did. It is my entire heart and soul is in this. I tell what one of my readers said, you tell these amazing, unflattering stories. Like, I'm calling myself out in this book. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I did. There's so many other stories, that I could tell, but I just wanted to keep it clear and succinct.
Sure.
And it's really all about, it's called The Recovering People Pleaser, a spiritual guide to reclaim your true worth, what we've been talking about here, and attract the love you deserve. And it's not just the love from people, it's the love from the universe. It's the love from God. And I don't say attract because the love from God's always there. But when we reclaim our true worth, not only does our environment change, like you oddly, I've attracted your beautiful spirit from this new place that I'm in. But not only that, we start to attract better experiences to us.
Yes.
And one of the things that can be kind of shocking for someone who's on their healing journey is that the low vibe takers, users, abusers, people in our life, they start to organically fall away as we lift our vibration. And it's this strange feeling because we're used to wanting to please everybody. And when someone leaves, we're like, am I doing something wrong? The truth is you're doing something right. You're returning to yourself. But those people that are not willing to grow with you, they're going to fall away. You're going to vibrate away from them. You're going to frequency away from them. But then you're going to attract higher vibrational people to you. I want to tell a quick story about the day my book was published. The people I now have in my life were blowing me up. My phone all day long was going off. People are sending me screenshots of things and stuff. I sat in this place of awe because I had never had so many people cheerleading for me ever. This was the first time. And I sat and looked at my life and I thought, wow, this is because I healed myself. This is because I healed myself, and who I attract to me now wants me to win. They're not trying to take from me. They're not trying to pull me down and make me wrong and all the things that they used to do. It's mind-blowing how this healing journey can truly shift our entire experience of life if we allow it.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. A podcaster, so I gotta show some love to a fellow podcaster as well, Kristen. Be remiss if we didn't give you an opportunity to tell the world about the wonderful work you do.
Oh, okay. So I do have a podcast. It's called the Sweet Empowerment Podcast, Reclaiming Your Personal Power. Shocking. That's what we talked about this whole time. You can find that on all major podcasting platforms. It's, again, my heart is in that as well. And I love my podcast, Aldi, because that was a courageous step for me. I had a massive fear of public speaking back in the day. And my first episode is 7 minutes. It's edited like crazy. And I'll leave that little sweet thing there. Because it shows where I've come from. Now there's 150 episodes or so. I got the intro, I got the interviews, I've got all the things. But yeah, my podcast is there. And I also do a lot on YouTube recently. So I'm growing my YouTube channel, which is at Kristen Brown. Same type of topic, helping people recover from toxic relationships, people pleasing recovery, reclaiming your personal power, healing shame and unworthiness. And I'm super big about energy, intuition, law of attraction, all those type of things as well. Yeah. So that's my YouTube, and my website is kristenbrown.org.
I so love even the story of starting a podcast. I mean, very audacious of you, I might add, first and foremost, but I think, I continually think that we need to take that first step, regardless where it is, regardless if we can see the staircase or not, the rest of the steps, the rest of the pathway, what the rest of the journey looks like, it's irrelevant. We still have to make that very first step and trust. and believe that you are going in the right direction. Because oftentimes we're led to hit that first step. And I truly, truly believe that if you're on the precipice and you're about to, and it feels awkward and it feels uncomfortable, that's all the more reason why you needed to go. And I'm glad that you did, and off you went. Now 150 episodes later, and you're just rolling, which is awesome. I love it.
There's no dream that's put in our heart that wasn't put there by our higher power. If the dream is there, that's because it's supposed to be there. We just have to show up to it.
Amazing. Kristen, I got to tell you, there was a part of me that there was a little concern. I thought, we got to do this interview again, and I don't want to call it an interview. We got to do this conversation again, and I remember just how great feeling after we finished the first time, going, I don't know if we can replicate that, but man, have we ever in so many ways. You're a delight to talk to. Your ability to see the greatness in people is a gift. It's a skill. And I tell you to keep using that, because what you're doing is you're bringing out the best in people each and every conversation, each and every interaction you have. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable. And again, just thank you for being audacious.
Oh my gosh, Audley. Conversation with you is awesome. And I knew it the minute I met you last time. I was like, I could talk to Audley for hours, like days. So yes, I appreciate you. And you know what? I pointed at you when you were saying that, because you're looking at yourself, bro. You're looking at yourself. You're a beautiful human being. You have so much love and light in you. And I'm just so happy that I met you. And thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. All the best. Congratulations, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Back we are here on the podcast, and I first off got to send out a shout out and appreciation to my good friend Kristen for being here and really engaging in such wonderful dialogue. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. Without question, you are absolutely living your best audacious life, and promoting things like the self-care we should practice amongst to ourselves, love in general, and taking responsibility for the way people treat us. And one of those things is by being very clear about the boundaries that we set up. So again, Kristen, thank you. When I think back to the conversation we just had, I really appreciated so much of what Kristen had to say. But if there's just one thing I take from our chat, it would have to be this. As humans, we all desire to be liked and accepted by others. This is natural, since we're such social creatures, and social acceptance is one of the most important things for our overall survival. Having said that, there is a fine line between trying to be a good person and being a people pleaser. Being a people pleaser can lead to a lot of problems, including anxiety, low self-esteem, and an inability to set boundaries. One of the most important things you can do to avoid being a people pleaser is to become aware of what those boundaries are. Know what you're comfortable with, and be willing to say no when you need to. It's also important to surround yourself with supportive people. Another key in avoid being a people pleaser is to accept that you can't please everyone. No matter how hard you try, there will always be someone who's not happy with who you are or what you're doing. It's for this reason why we should focus on pleasing ourselves first and doing what's best for us. Practicing self-care is another important way to avoid being a people pleaser. And you heard Kristen talk about that and how important that is. This means that you're taking time for yourself to recharge and rejuvenate while engaging in activities that make you happy, which can lower our stress levels. Finally, it's important to surround yourself with supportive people who respect your boundaries and encourage you to do what's best for you. Seek out people who have similar values and goals as you do, and who encourage you to be yourself. This will help build up your self-confidence and become more comfortable with who you are. Being a people pleaser can lead to a lot of negative consequences. However, by being mindful of aware, we can avoid falling into that trap. And remember, it's okay to say no and to put yourself first. By doing so, you'll be happier and fulfilled in the long run, leading to a much more audacious life. We've sadly come to the end of another episode of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. And as always, I send my thanks and appreciation to those amazing lovers of Audaciousness and those listeners that support this podcast and keep it going with their ongoing tremendous support. So to all of you, I say thank you. And again, that support is so much appreciated. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.